On episode 464 of the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, we welcome back Dr. Eric Westman and Amy Berger and discuss their book, End Your Carb Confusion, a simple guide to customize your carb intake for optimal health. You can find the full show notes for this episode at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/464. Have you decided you're ready to make a change? To reclaim your health and fitness? The 40 Plus Fitness Podcast is here for you. I'm your host, Alan Meisner. I'm an NSAM certified personal trainer with a specialization in corrective exercise and fitness nutrition. Let me be your coach as you find your way on your health and fitness journey. All right, let's go. Raz, how you doing?
Good, Alan. How are you today?
I'm doing well. We made it back down to Panama in one piece. Travel issues all the way along, running away from dodging COVID, as I talked about earlier, because It just seemed like the caseloads, were really picking up, and we're seeing that now with what they're reporting on the news and all. But, we're back here. Caseloads on the island and across most of Panama are reasonable, but, it's going to be here till it's not. And
right,
we got to take one day. And I know they're doing, shutdowns again. And as we're going through this. And so I know it's really hard on folks right now, but keep your chin up, keep focused. The new year's coming. You can get through this. You've gotten this far, you can get through this. So just, put your sights on what's important to you, your family, your health. And if it's your fitness, find ways to do it at home.
That's right. We didn't come this far to come this far. So we can just keep it up and we'll get through the holidays and into next year. It'll be great.
So how are things up in Michigan?
Cold.
Yep.
but good. Yeah. We haven't seen a ton of snow quite yet, but I know some places around us are getting it. So I'm looking forward to the snow because if it's going to be cold, it might as well be pretty. And running in the snow is pretty entertaining for me as well. So I'm looking forward to that.
Just watch for the ice that's under the snow.
Yeah.
So, particularly early in the season and late in the season, where you get that melt and then the refreeze and then the snow on top. Just mind your footing.
That's right.
And then, so our guests today are actually pretty cool. I've met both of them at Keto Fest and talked to both of them at Keto Fest. And I've had both of them on the podcast before. It's Dr. Eric Westman and Amy Berger. So why don't we go give them a chat? Our guests today are Dr. Eric Westman and Amy Berger. Dr. Westman is an associate professor of medicine at Duke University. He is board certified in obesity medicine and internal medicine and founded the Duke Keto Medicine Clinic in 2006 after 8 years of clinical research regarding low carbohydrate ketogenic diets. Amy Berger is an Air Force veteran and certified nutrition specialist who specializes in helping people do keto without the crazy. She has a master's degree in human nutrition and writes about a wide range of health and nutrition-related topics such as insulin, metabolism, weight loss, diabetes, thyroid function, and more. With no further ado, here's Dr. Westman and Amy. Amy, Dr. Westman, welcome to 40 Plus Fitness.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Well, Amy, and I have to say welcome back because I have had you on before. So it's really good to see you two again and be talking to you. We've met at Keto Fest and spent a little bit of time talking. So I'm very familiar with the work, and I was really excited to see the new book, End Your Carb Confusion, a simple guide to customize your carb intake for optimal health. And it's a keto book, obviously. When we talk low carb, most people are going to get into ketosis at some level. But this is something I think that makes it simple. It was so many carb books, they want simple rules, but you actually took the process and said, hey, we're not going to give you a cookbook. We're just going to say, look, here's how you understand what carbs are doing to you, and here's a layout of a plan. And I think having that plan walks them through. It's like, these are the foods you can eat. These are the foods you stay away from. And you give the reasons why. I just think that it's a very well put together book to end carb confusion.
Great. Thank you. We have been working in the low carb space. And yes, I'm known as a keto guy. As a researcher, I helped to validate the low carb diets over the last 20 years. But I also realized there are a lot of other ways to go about things. And, I'm in a clinic treating people grounded, and I think that's helped me understand that there are a lot of ways, there are a lot of carbs that some people can eat. In fact, I have a brother who can eat all of these carbs and he's never gained weight. So using a keto diet in the clinic, and the book is, I would say it's keto and more. We never say you have to do keto, and we help you find out whether you do need it or not. And I've tried to bring in really the science, not just from my own research, but the science on low glycemic diets, the science on just the lower carb types of diets that have come out, well, over the last 20 years. But yes, I am an author on the New Atkins for a New You and Keto Clarity. But this is my first solo venture. I'm trying to bring in all of the information I've learned from other researchers as well. I look to Christopher Gardner at Stanford, David Ludwig at Harvard. And, the common theme is sugar is the bad guy, not fat. And so knowing that I'm, in a clinic still and busy, I teamed up with Amy Berger, who is a professional writer. I'm not, I'm a researcher and a scientific writer. And so Amy had a way of articulating the same ideas in a very readable format. So you're not going to be reading a lot of my words. There are also Amy's, and she's been in this space for just about as long as me, not in the research world, but so I'm really trying to bring the knowledge that I've gained into a readable form. And this, I hope, is for the general public to read. It's not, low carb, I'm going to lock you up in a low carb prison. It's understanding, how can my brother eat 150 carbs a day and still be healthy? It's understanding that.
Yeah, and Amy, and Dr. Westman, yes, that's the one thing I would say about this book is it didn't bury me in the science because a lot of books do. It was very clear, and I think for someone who's looking at this space and has just gotten scared or confused, and again they don't understand why can my significant other eat that way and not gain a pound, but I look at a donut and so it's very well done. I really appreciate it. Let's take that conversation about sugar a little bit further, because for decades, just stay away from fat, stay away from fat, stay away from fat. And the food companies were really nice about making the food taste good by just replacing the fat with sugar. And that's been horrific on our health. Can you explain what exactly is going on in our body when we're ingesting too much sugar?
Sure. We've really rediscovered or gone back to 100 years ago when this was all well understood. It's like we came through a period of time where it all got messed up, the focus on fat in the food. And so that's, the understanding, of course, is deeper now, but it's been known for a long time that if you eat or drink sugar, you raise the blood sugar, or glucose more specifically, and then that causes an insulin response in the body. And it's that glucose insulin response we now understand is the root cause for the atherosclerosis, so the heart disease, the stroke, the kidney disease, and diabetes. Of course, diabetes is defined as an elevated blood sugar. So, my patients, again, I teach this in a clinic in North Carolina where I have to have a lot of different people understand what we're talking about. And they understand that if you drink sugar, like sweet tea, it raises the blood sugar. And so why we've forgotten that is a whole nother story. But, we start the book by talking about how things aren't perfect now. The focus on fat has not solved our problems. And the real reason is what sugar does in the body, sugar and insulin, glucose and insulin.
Yeah, Amy, as I was into the book and we got into the discussion of glycation, I think that was a wake up word for me. When your blood gets sticky, bad things are going to happen.
Yeah, it's kind of an oversimplification, although kind of like you said, the subtitle of our book is a simple guide to customizing. Eric and I both are frankly stunned at how complicated a very simple way of eating has been made out to be the last few years. So we purposely wrote this book to appeal to a very broad audience. maybe to be appealing to the people on Twitter and Facebook and Reddit that eat, sleep, and breathe keto and low carb all the time. But also, this is the book to give to your mother or your cousin, the one that has obesity or has diabetes, but they're never going to do a keto diet. They're never going to learn about mTOR and autophagy and all this stuff. They just want to feel a little better. And anyway, with the glycation, you know, we tried to explain everything without the scientific jargon and the gobbledygook. It's all written in plain English. And we explain glycation as basically, you know, for people that don't realize that diabetes is really a vascular disease. It's a blood vessel disease. Cardiovascular disease is the number one actual cause of death in people with type 2 diabetes. And this is why people with diabetes have so many problems with the eyes and the kidneys, because these organs or these tissues have teeny tiny, very, very fragile blood vessels. And when your blood is, for lack of a better word, very sticky with sugar and viscous, think of it like instead of water flowing through your veins, now you've got molasses trying to flow through your vein. Your heart's trying to pump this sticky sugar. And not only is the blood sticky, the blood vessels are mucked up and gunked up with sugar. The whole system is just more fragile. And this is the root of many of the problems that people with diabetes have. But something that we really harp on in the book that is like a huge mission for me to help educate people about is that even when your blood sugar is normal, so you don't have diabetes or prediabetes, your blood sugar can be totally normal, but you might have a lot of these problems because you have really high insulin. The reason your blood sugar is normal is because that insulin is keeping it in check. So whether or not your blood sugar is normal, you still might be living with this long list of issues that come from these metabolic problems driven by consuming too much carbohydrate.
Now, there's a phrase you use in the book, and I've used it and I've heard it before. Some of us can tolerate more carbohydrates than others, and you use the term carbohydrate threshold. Can you talk through that and why that's important for us to understand for ourselves so we can actually have a plan? Because I think so many people go in and say, well, you know, initially this was keto was advertised as the bacon diet because everybody was all excited they were going to get to eat bacon again. And then, you know, then it was the butter in your coffee diet. And then it was the MCT oil, and now it's exogenous ketones, and it's, you know, but simplifying it, we've got to take it back down and understand this is going to be somewhat of an experiment of N=1, where, you know, you're the subject and it's what you can eat, what you can tolerate that's going to be the most important thing. So can you talk about that concept of carbohydrate threshold and how it affects how we would approach the adapt your life way of eating?
Yeah, you know, this is a scientific genetic predisposition that we're talking about, and we can put people in the right direction. So we have a questionnaire you complete to see if you're going to be someone who has more carbohydrate intolerance or a lower carb threshold to achieve good health, or you have a higher carb threshold. And so we have a checklist of items to look at, but it's not perfect. There is some trial and error there, and we explain that. And this is what I do in my clinic. I'll start people out if they're trying to lose weight, at a very low carb level, and then help people reintroduce carbs if they want to find their threshold. And we are shying away from the high tech use of ketones and blood measurements and breath, and when the watches, the digital watches, are non-invasive and you get ketones, then I think it'll be reasonable. But we don't ask anyone to do high tech measurements. It's predicting what direction you should be in and then monitoring how you do. And so it's a genetic predisposition. I mean, it's as if what helped us survive in famines, when there was no food around, is now a liability, so that those who are good storers of the extra energy are the ones who have the lower threshold of carbs. So you're going to hold on to it more. Of course, the more active you are, the more carbs you can have. That's the family member I have who's very active, can eat more carbs and is very healthy. But the carb threshold is really important in terms of metabolic health. And we help people find that out. When I kind of step back, this is one of the first books to embrace a wide range of carbohydrates in the diet, acknowledging been recommending a wide range, but it's a lot lower than has been recommended if you're doing high carb types of diets in the past. But the carb threshold is really important, and we are not using high-tech ways for you to figure that out.
Yeah, if I can just chime in quickly, I think we do have a range, but even our highest recommendation compared to a standard type Western diet is lower. But I think the reason, Dr. Westman is an obesity medicine specialist, and I think we talk a lot about weight, but in that checklist we have where people can help, they determine what level they should be starting at. Weight is only a tiny piece of this. There's so many issues that you can be dealing with, even if you're at a quote unquote normal weight. I hate that phrase, but a normal weight, if you're not carrying excess body fat. But we do start, depending on your medical situation, we start most people out at the very lowest level, because when your carb intake is that low, like Dr. Westman was saying, you don't have to measure your ketones. You don't have to measure your blood glucose. You're going to be in ketosis. You're going to be fat burning at that level. Everybody will. And then who can also be fat burning and be healthy at a higher level is variable. But the reason we tend to start most people out at the lowest level is because it's the easiest way to do it. There's not a lot of guesswork. You will be either ketogenic or burning fat at that point without weighing and measuring your food and calculating the macro. I mean, I love food. I love to eat. I refuse to turn my meals. I am never going to open a spreadsheet when I sit down to the dinner table. Other people love to do that. And if you want to, great. But the plan that we've designed is designed so that you don't have to do any of that.
Yeah, it's funny because some of the science that would come out in the past, they would, they'd say we're going to have a low carb group and a high carb group, and then a lot of people in the keto space would argue and say, oh, well, that's not keto, that's not low carb. And I'm thinking, well, if they were eating 250 grams of sugar per day before, 100 grams of sugar actually feels pretty darn low.
It's all relative. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then one of the funny things that would come out of a lot of those studies would be, well, it's unsustainable. So they're thinking, okay, no one can go down to 25 grams and stay there for the rest of their lives, but there's people who've been doing it for decades. So yes, you can. Can you talk about the 3 levels of the Adapt Your Life eating style so people can have a general idea of what each of those entails?
Yeah, maybe I'll talk about the levels that you can give the detail on the different foods, Amy. That's another great thing about having a nutrition expert as a co-author on a book. We make a good team. So again, it's kind of a rough, these are cut points of numbers that are not written in stone. I can't imagine that there's an equation like Einstein that says this number represents this for everyone. But there's a phenomenon that we repeatedly see, and that is the lower the carbs, the more percentage of people will be in ketosis or have the metabolic effects of the ketosis. And so we have kind of the other main point is we use total carbs, not net carbs, because it's more precise. It's more scientific. The net carb is a whole nother kind of distraction. So we start at about a 20 total carb per day sort of approach. And actually, it is very sustainable, as you say, if you learn how to do it right. And then we found that, and other studies have used carbs up to about 50 per day. And again, this is kind of a general rule of thumb. And then, we have stories of people who are using these different levels in the book. And then for those who are very active, they're younger, they might be cyclists doing, competitive cycling. They are able to be healthy at a much higher carb level. And the number's not important, it's just a higher level. But, with sugar being the bad guy now, not fat in the food, we have estimated that, and from clinical experience and studies, some people can have up to 100, 150 grams of carbs per day and be healthy. So this kind of explains the person that you see, how can they eat all that? And you don't see what they're doing in terms of other lifestyle things and the metabolic flexibility or the carbohydrate tolerance is the big factor now. It's not fat anymore. In fact, I would just want to comment, we don't really make any comment on fat being bad. And so you can eat bacon on this kind of diet too, even if you're not keto, okay? So we've got to sanitize the idea that fat is bad, and you're not going to read that. So we're like resetting what someone should understand about food without even paying much attention to the old stuff that got us off track.
Yeah, I think something that's unique about our book, though, is that we also don't demonize carbohydrate. I mean, look around the world. There are quite literally billions of people that eat rice, they eat beans, they eat fruit, they eat potatoes, and they're healthy, they're lean, they live into, well into old age. And so for us to say that cantaloupe is poison or black beans are killing you is kind of ridiculous. And so, but it depends on your health situation. Certain foods that might be perfectly suitable for one person are not suitable for the other person who has PCOS or diabetes or hypertension or whatever. But I think that's unique in that we acknowledge that you can actually eat carbohydrate, and we also, other than just recommending, okay, depending on where you're starting from, here's the carbohydrate level we recommend. I think something that's also different and that hopefully people are hungry for, no pun intended, is that we explain how to gradually increase your carbohydrate intake if you choose to. Like we were saying, you can live at 20 or 30 grams of carbs for your whole life if you want to. But let's say you do a strict ketogenic diet, you lose 200 pounds, you reverse your type 2 diabetes, you reverse that, everything's great. Now what? Do you need to stay super strict keto forever? Or can you have that occasional sweet potato? Can you have the occasional piece of fruit? And the answer is, for most people, probably yes. And we walk you through how to reintroduce that stuff slowly and systematically so that you don't regain the weight and you don't trigger a recurrence of all those health issues. But we're very clear that you don't have to increase the carbs, but if you want to, here's how to do it in a way that is most likely to work for you long term.
Well, I practice a thing I call seasonal ketosis, where I do get strict keto for a period of time, usually starting in February after my birthday. And I'll go, pretty much until August in more of a strict keto way of eating. I call that my famine season. And then it rolls around football season and, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and my birthday, like I said. And then I go into my feasting season. So I'm, if I had to give it a classification, I would say I'm in level 1 for much of the year. And then when I'm ready to let loose, I'm in level 3, but I'm still generally low carb at level 3. But if, that's why I liked what you were offering there, because it does kind of give us that flexibility to say, if I'm meeting my goals, my health is good, I can let a little bit more carbs in, and again, check and see how that's working for you. Because you can always step back down to that level 1 if you need to. So again, I really appreciated the way you put that forward. This episode of the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast is brought to you by Thrive Market. I love shopping on Thrive Market. They have the best organic products and brands at awesome prices. Thrive Market is a membership program that allows you to shop online and have healthy food and personal care products shipped right to your home, with carbon neutral shipping and 100% recyclable packaging. Free shipping for orders over $49. You should also check out the Thrive Market branded products to save even more. I always save more than my membership fee on my first 1 or 2 orders. Over the course of a year, the savings can really add up. When you join Thrive Market, you do more than just unlock your own savings. You also sponsor membership and shopping credit for low-income families, students, teachers, veterans, and first responders. Go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/thrive. For a limited time, Thrive Market is offering a selection of free gifts valued at up to $24 just for joining. Learn more at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/thrive. Now, whenever anything gets cool, there's a profit to be made. Companies are going to step in. So when fat became a problem, they started advertising low fat. When sugar became a problem, they started advertising low sugar. And when keto came along, paleo did it, now keto, they're suddenly going to be coming out with these keto-friendly products, and they're everywhere, and they have the right macros. So it's like, okay, this should be good. What are the problems that we really have when we start looking at these commercialized keto products?
Amy, you want to take this one on first?
Well, yeah. So it's like you were saying earlier, or I don't know if this is maybe before we started recording. Those things are great as a transition step. If you're not prepared to give up your cookies and your cake and your pie and your ice cream, better to have the keto version made with almond flour and erythritol and coconut flour. And for some people, that'll work perfectly long term. For other people, because it's keto, it tends to be very high in fat, like it's made with coconut butter and oils and cream cheese. But it also, a lot of these products contain a lot of sugar, alcohol, and a lot of added fiber, not intrinsic fiber, but fiber that they add for bulk or texture. And so these products are allowed to be labeled as either keto or very low in net carbs. And the problem is that some people's bodies react to sugar alcohols, these sort of non-sugar sweeteners, almost as if they're sugar, not quite as extreme as regular sugar, but they're still having a blood glucose and insulin response. And so not only are you having that response, but you're combining it with an item that's very, very high in fat. So these sort of quote unquote keto ice creams and keto cakes and stuff are one of the biggest reasons we see for fat loss, not happening the way people want it to, or for just things not progressing the way someone would want to. And I'm not opposed to these things, but you have to go by your results. If these things are a regular part of your diet and you're not happy with the results you're getting, that's one of the areas you would look to maybe cut those things out. It's kind of like, let me put it this way. When you were saying like in the 80s, when everything was low fat and it was loaded with sugar, I can eat the whole box because it's low in fat. People are doing that now with the keto. Oh, it's low in carbs, so I can eat the whole pint of ice cream. It's low carb, I can eat the whole box of cookies. Low carb does not mean low calorie. And I know we hate the C word in our community, but just because something's low in calories, you still have to deal with that food. Just because it's low in carbs, that food energy, those calories still have to be put somewhere.
Yeah, and I appreciate you mentioning sugar alcohols, because I've never been a huge fan of those. I think when you are you're trying to go low carb and you want to make it something that's generally sustainable, we don't allow our bodies to reset our palate. We're used to eating all this sugar, and so we like things sweet. Ketchup has a lot of sugar in it. People don't recognize that because you barely taste that sweetness because we've been, I guess we've been programmed. They put more sugar in and we eat more, and they put more sugar in and we eat more. Sugar alcohols, in my opinion, don't really give us that opportunity to really begin to taste the sweetness in standard foods. But that being said, I was standing in line with you, Dr. Westman, at Keto Fest, and you said we need to do something. We don't have to be perfect, but we just need to do something. And so I take that back and say, if you need a bridge, these commercialized products or the sugar alcohols might be okay, but you need to put that in context of where your end state is, where you want to go. So thank you for that, because that was pretty profound standing in a dinner line with you, Dr. Westman.
Progress, not perfection, is kind of a general theme when you're helping someone that has a long journey. And not only the sugar alcohols, I need them for the true carb addict to keep them away from sugar. Sugar addiction being the most common carb that people are addicted to. But the other thing that I see in these products is they'll add the oils or to make the macros right, but then at least when I drink them, I get stomach trouble. So I don't think these have been well tested, and certainly they haven't been in the clinical trials of keto. So we're trying to go back to the real food idea. Don't add in these other products. And certainly if you're drinking something that gives you a stomach issue, that's not keto. That's the product.
Yeah,
that's doing it.
Well, it's a big thing. I tell people, one of the big tips for weight loss is don't drink your calories. So if you're adding fat to your coffee, you might like it that way, but in a general sense, you're adding calories to and you're drinking them. So it's not filling you up as much as you would think it would.
There are all these new things, that have not been tested. The idea of putting oils in the coffee and medium chain triglyceride, it will raise your ketone level momentarily. But if you have then 5 of those over the course of the day, you're going to be stopping your endogenous fat burning. So, and you want ketones to come from your body fat if you're trying to lose weight. And so we explain that in the book, that the way you look at these things is different depending on what you're trying to accomplish. And I see a lot of people who really don't need the keto metabolism, but they're doing it because it's fashionable. And then, 6 months later, they're, well, what do I do now? Well, they didn't really need it in the first place, or maybe 1 month later. And so that's how we can help you figure out with this book what carb threshold still is going to be healthy for you. So, let's say you drank the keto Kool-Aid, but you really don't need it. We're going to help you figure that out. And on the other end, if you're scared about keto, that's okay. We may actually end up convincing you or reassuring you that you can eat carbs, you can have fruit, you can have some bread and still be healthy. So we're trying to demystify it and also take the fear away of it. Thus, the end your carb confusion. It might be end your carb fear or keto fear as well as a title.
Now, one of the things you had in level 1 that I understood is, we're going to have to, if we're going to be at less than 20 grams of carbs, that's pretty much going to negate fruit from that level. But what was interesting was you also negated nuts and cheese. And I was like, oh, well, fathead pizza, you've got it. It's just a cheese bomb. So, everybody in keto eats cheese, right? That's the big thing we take away is the bacon and the cheese. But you also say we probably should be cutting back on the nuts or eliminating the nuts and the cheese while we're in this phase 1. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, those are probably the most common reasons that the kind of casual keto you read on the internet, learn it from a friend, why it doesn't work for people. So if you do have a carb issue, a carbohydrate intolerance, insulin resistance is the same term, prediabetes, then calories will matter, and trigger foods can make you eat more of them so you overcome the calorie and carb limits. So implicit in our approach, and remember, this is an approach that's been used over 150 years. So It's really not all that new, but a common mistake is over consuming nuts, the cheese, the cream, in the coffee or tea. So we do have and explain to you why those things need to be limited. Fortunately, it's not hard to limit them once your appetite is gone. So it's not as an extreme, I can't give that up, because as long as you've gotten started and your appetite's down, it's easier to make those adjustments. But those are common mistakes that we see. I'm doing keto, but it's not working. Too many nuts, too much cheese, cream.
Yeah, and to be clear, those foods are suitable for a ketogenic diet. It's just, if your goal is fat loss, those foods are just, they call it hand-to-mouth, or hand-to-mouth disease. You sit down with a bag of almonds and you're supposed to have an ounce, and before you know it, the bag is gone. And the thing is also with nuts, I personally find they don't even fill me up. I can have half a bag of nuts and still feel like I barely ate anything. So nuts are actually not permitted at all on the lowest level of our diet. Cheese is permitted, but the total quantity is limited. And again, it's not, those foods are high in fat, they're low in carbs, but they're just so easy to massively overdo. And that's really why they're limited. And they are reintroduced, nuts and seeds are reintroduced on level 2. So, if you're someone that is very, very sick or very, very overweight starting out, make it your goal to get to the point where you can progress to level 2 and maybe reintroduce those things. But yeah, that's really the rationale. Just because something is low in carbs doesn't mean it's going to be the best thing for you to eat.
My clinical experience, it's quite a privilege. I've been involved in research and taking care of patients, and it's also humbling, because I'll have people come back and they look me in the eye and say, it's not working. So I have to figure out why. and help people. Usually it's we give a lot of information at first, and there's one little thing that it didn't seem that big and all that, but so you have to understand what we're explaining and presenting is something that really works. And in fact, it's been, hammered through years of clinical experience and people looking me in the eye saying, hey, fix me. So this isn't just some, off the shelf kind of rearrangement of foods, which I see again as another theme where you could be on the bookshelf and there are 15 different books and you don't know which one to start with. We're talking about one that has been vetted through clinical and personal experience for a long time, so you can have that confidence. In fact, we were discussing in writing the book, do we include scientific references even? And finally, it came down to we don't have to. We don't have one scientific reference in this because it's all proven. It's all, do you have to have a study that shows the sun's coming up tomorrow? So again, we want to make it simple, not distract you with the glit. In fact, books that have hundreds of references, I think sometimes they're protesting too much that, look at all the science. No, this is practical. It really works. And it comes from our experience with real people.
And frankly, nothing, at least in my opinion, nothing that we say in the book is all that controversial. Nothing really needs to be backed up. Well, here's the study that shows this crazy thing we're saying. Nothing we're not even demonizing some of the things that others in the larger low carb and keto space really worry about, like artificial sweeteners, not the sugar alcohols, but things like sucralose and aspartame and saccharin, like Splenda, Sweet and Low, that stuff. Because that really doesn't have the same metabolic effect as the sugar alcohols. It's almost negligible. Those things, we don't fearmonger about what they call the seed oils. If you're on a budget and you can't spend $8 for a bottle of avocado oil salad dressing, it's okay for you to get the ranch dressing with the soybean oil. You can go to the discount store and get the ground beef for $3 a pound. It doesn't have to be grass-fed. All that great stuff, the food quality, local farms, is fabulous if you can afford it. But this plan, Dr. Westman's patients are the entire spectrum of financial resources, of educational level, of socioeconomic status. This approach has to work for every single one of them, every race, every ethnicity. Whoever walks through that clinic door, this needs to work. And so we're kind of like, we take all comers, whether you're a millionaire and you have a personal chef, or you're going to go to the fast food drive-through and get the bunless burger. Guess what? This is going to work as long as you stay within your carb, limit.
Yeah. And so, the way I looked at this, I was like, this is if you're keto curious or low carb curious, this is a good book to introduce you to it, because it's not super deep in science. I mean, it's backed up. I promise you, I've seen the studies that back up everything that Dr. Westman and Amy are saying in this book. So it's there. And then if you're someone who's done keto and then plateaued, I think this is going to give you a lot of answers for why what you're doing right now might not be working for you. And it's a lot of the things we talked about today. It's not understanding your carb threshold. It's getting into the recipes. My feed in Facebook is every other post in my Facebook right now from a keto is some kind of sweet, how to make a pie, how to make a tart, how to make a cookie, how to make a cake, how to make, and so, yeah, if you're filling up with that kind of stuff, there's probably reasons why you're getting too many calories. And like you said, Amy, while a lot of people in the keto community don't want to count calories, you don't have to, but if you're eating calorie dense food, you're probably eating more calories than your body really needs. And if you're not losing weight, you're definitely eating more calories than your body probably needs. And we don't like to hear that in the keto community, but guess what? Both camps are a little bit right. And if you put them together, you have a really good plan. And in your book, and your Carb Confusion, I think you do an excellent job with the experience you have putting that in there. So thank you so much again for letting me profile this book. I do have one final question for each of you. So I'll start with you, Amy. I define wellness as being the healthiest, fittest, and happiest you can be. What are 3 strategies or tactics to get and stay well?
3 strategies and tactics. It depends on how we define, happiness, health, and all that. You sent this question ahead of time, and I didn't give it that much thought. Because I guess I thought it was more defining them than how to do it. I mean, whatever you need to do to be able to participate in life the way you want to, whether it's having the mobility to go do the physical, pursuits you want to do, or whether it's feeling well enough mentally and emotionally to interact with people the way you want to and enjoy the hobbies you want. I don't think, six-pack abs are not required for any of that. So don't let health and pursuit of some kind of optimal physique come at the expense of your mental and emotional health, because I see that all the time in our community. And it's, what's the point of looking great if you're miserable all the time on the inside? So I would say eat and socialize and move in such a way that you are able to do all the things you want to do physically and intellectually.
Thank you. Dr. Westman, I'll ask you the same question. I define wellness as being the healthiest, fittest, and happiest you can be. What are 3 strategies or tactics to get and stay well?
I love that. And, I've often wondered what the doctor's role is. And, doctor means teacher back in the root word. And I've often thought that the health side of things, the doctor really is just an advisor. And I'm trying to get people to live as long and as happy and as healthy a life as they can. So help to optimize that, very consistent with your definition. And, going beyond our book, it's mind, body, spiritual wellness. And so we talk about nutrition. Getting nutrition right helps you in that direction in so many ways. Just by changing the foods, I see people rediscovering all these other aspects of their lives that were thrown off just because of the food. So we start with nutrition, and then, I think being physically active and happy, and then emotionally, spiritually, community helps with that a lot too. So it's more complicated than we dive into in this book, but those are the principles that we use when we approach this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's, if I just real quick, if I can kind of piggyback, because I almost forgot. In the book, we do mention that, once you start feeling better physically, because, a lot of people have brain fog and low mood, and this shift in diet has this cascading effect that once you actually start feeling better and you have more energy and your thinking is sharper, it's easier to re-engage with those other aspects of your life, with the physicality and the spirituality and all that other stuff that maybe you literally weren't able to do because you were so limited by your physical health.
Great. So, Amy, Dr. Westman, if someone wanted to learn more about the book and your carb confusion or what you guys are doing, where would you like for me to send them?
Yeah, the End Your Carb Confusion book is available at any bookstore, Amazon or Barnes & Noble or any bookseller coming out very soon or this week. And then the deep dive, I've actually started a Adapt Your Life Academy, where if you really want to get into detail beyond the book, and this is a Keto Made Simple course that we have available now. It's called adaptyourlifeacademy.com. And then drwestmanonline.com is a resource to help figure out where to go based on the things that I understand are most helpful on the internet. The End Your Carb Confusion is available now.
Amy?
Yeah, right now my website is, we had a little glitch. So it's toitnutrition.com, but you actually have to put www.toitnutrition.com. If you just put toitnutrition.com at the moment, it won't come up. And I'm also on YouTube. My YouTube channel is the same at To It Nutrition, and that's my handle on Twitter. And Dr. Westman is also on Twitter. And Adapt Your Life, look for that on YouTube as well. They have, hundreds and hundreds of hours of interviews, not just with Dr. Westman, but, Ken Berry and all kinds of keto experts and doctors and nutritionists and trainers that have been, interviewed by the company. So lots of stuff there too.
Great. You can go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/464, and I'll be sure to have links, all the links mentioned here today. So, Dr. Westman, Amy, thank you so much for being a part of 40 Plus Fitness.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, welcome back.
Wow, that was a great interview, Alan. A lot of good stuff in there today.
Yeah, whenever I get to talking to someone about keto, sometimes it can get really technical, and I think a lot of people get scared away by something that sounds so strict, something so difficult. And a lot of times you're thinking about, well, how do I keep my carbs below 25 grams when I love bread and I love biscuits and I love, potatoes and I love, vegetables and fruit and ice cream and cakes and candies and all the other stuff. I mean, we're buried in carbs. You walk into a grocery store and quite literally the entire middle of the grocery store is just a big stack of shelves of carbs in boxes, bags, cartons. It's insane. So, what they've come up with their ADAPT approach, and, it just makes it a little easier to understand what's in the food you're eating. Everybody wants an easy button. And, it would be great if we could just sit there and like make it easy and just say it's this or it's that. But a lot of times I run my challenges and we find that place, or I have the lose a size challenge thing that we go through. It's 8 weeks. It's 28 days. And then I have my other weight loss program. It's 8 weeks. And we kind of just stage through there to find where people are comfortable. And we push a little bit more and we push a little bit more. It's sometimes easier to start with the hard part and then kind of ease back and find your place. But we all have our carb threshold. And I think that was a really important concept.
Yeah, that was really important because actually I've been playing around with my carb levels lately as well. I'm trying to switch up my diet a little bit because I've been at a plateau, so I know it's time for a change. But it was really interesting to see how people just naturally have different levels of carbs that they can manage without feeling the bad side effects or messing around with the blood sugar levels. So that's a really interesting but hard to get to point.
Yeah, self-experimentation is one of those where you try something, you got to give it time and see if it works. So it's it's one of those things where you're going to be investing time, a lot of time. So in some cases, a lot of time because you're going to say, okay, for 4 weeks, I'm going to eat this way. And then I'm going to do some measurements. I'm going to, look at what happened and see if it's working. If it's working, I stick with it. If not, maybe I ratchet it down a little bit more. Maybe I do something different. You can't add too many things in there, or you don't know exactly what it is that's doing the good stuff or the bad. Right. So finding that mark, and if you want to get technical with it, you can do the glucose meters and the ketone meters. I'm a big fan of my Keto Mojo when I'm, really trying to get down into ketosis, particularly in the early stages of it. So I'll do the Keto Mojo and I'm checking my blood sugar, I'm checking my ketones. And then I'm just finding that spot. But I've been doing this now for 8 years.
Wow.
I kind of know, okay, if I eat this way, this is what's going to happen in my body. And almost invariably it does. Now, that said, as I've gotten older, I've noticed that my carb tolerance has gone down. So, if I try to eat more carbs just to find my line has been slowly edging downward over time. And as a result, when I go into my feasting mode, I actually put on more weight faster than I did the first few years that I did this. So I have to still I can't go completely crazy out there eating all the carbs, but so I do have to pay a little bit of attention what I'm doing, or I can go a little overboard on it. But I think it's just knowing yourself, getting that self-awareness is really, really important. And the tools, any tool you want to use, they try to make it really simple. Try this, then that, and what you can and can't eat. But simple is good for most of us. It'll work just fine. But if you're somebody who needs a little bit more hard data, there are tools to help you do that.
Yeah, I've got one of those meters myself, and I'll be getting that out pretty soon once I settle in on a couple of swaps that I want to make. I've been eating similar foods. I eat a lot of eggs, Brussels sprouts, a lot of beef, a lot of chicken. I feel like I'm in a rut with my food, so it's time to switch it up. And once I do that, then I'll get out the meter and see how it feels or how it works.
It's the worst tragedy in the world was the sacrifice of Brussels sprouts. We can't get them down here, and so we
No
had 2 bags of
kidding.
them. We had 2 bags of them. We were going to bring down. I
Uh-huh.
guess it's technically smuggling because you're not supposed to bring vegetables and fruits into the country.
Oh
But
gosh.
we, we had them in our bags, and our bags were coming up overweight because the max weight the couple would carry is 50 pounds, and we just could not get our weight right. We just couldn't get it to
Oh,
work. So we were like, okay, this has to go. And
oh.
yeah, well, we let go of a lot of stuff before we let go of the Brussels sprouts, but that was kind of the last thing. Is
Aw.
I've got to leave the Brussels sprouts. It was either that or the beef jerky and deer jerky, and I'm like, nope,
Oh,
nope, the deer jerky's
yeah.
going. We're
I
sorry,
have to
Brussels
say,
sprouts. Yeah.
yeah.
So I had to make that sacrifice, but I hated leaving those in the hotel room when we checked out, but
Oh, such a bummer.
I had to do it. And I didn't even get to eat that many Brussels sprouts when I was up in the States, which was the other sad thing is that most restaurants aren't serving it. So unless you cook it for
Oh,
yourself, it's really, again,
yep.
I don't want to depress myself. I've got great things down here. I've got great
Well,
things down here.
that's right. That's right. You just got to
Yeah.
make a list of all the things that you can eat and enjoy eating,
Yeah.
and then you won't miss so many other things.
Yeah. And then I think the other thing that I just want to kind of emphasize from this conversation we had was, when I was standing in the food line at Keto Fest with Dr. Westman, it was just kind of one of those moments when he said, we just need to do something.
Right.
The word keto, if that scares you, then it's not keto. It's just low carb. I'm just lowering my carbs a little bit to see if that helps me on my weight loss journey, helps me feel and look healthier. You're lowering your carbs. And if that means that the way you're doing that is eating Atkin bars and, canned tuna, then that's the way you're doing it. If it means that, you're just looking for lower carb options of ketchup and, maybe even some of the fake pastas and making, fake biscuits and things like that, that's fine. If that's what helps you get that start, you just have to take that first step. We're after progress, not perfection.
Right, right. I like to tell people just move that needle, just move it slightly and make some simple swaps, And if you do measure your carbs and you eat whatever 100 grams of carbs a day or something, slide that down to 90, slide it down to 85. I mean, you don't have to make these huge cuts. Why make a huge cut that will make you want to binge later or that you can't live with, that makes you unhappy? Just as long as you move that needle just slightly, I think it would make a big difference.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's as simple as saying, instead of eating the banana and putting that in my morning smoothie, I'm not going to put the banana in there. I'm just going to put the berries and put the protein powder and then put some ice and blend it all up. And that's going to be my breakfast. And I'm just not going to put the banana in there and try that, so that cut 100 grams of calories, 100 calories out of your meal, which is mostly sugar, and you're cutting that out. And so it can be simple stuff like that. And I'm in no way saying don't eat bananas, that they're unhealthy. Just like Amy said, we're not villainizing any food. We're just saying being aware of how your body reacts to it is really what this math is all about. That's how you solve this weight loss problem, is understanding food for your body. It's unique to you. People all over the world are eating rice and beans, as Amy said, but we need to find what food fits us best for what our particular goals are now, and that can change over time. Someone right now that's not very active probably doesn't need a lot of carbs, but if you're doing the exercise, then your body can handle that. Insulin is this just really cool thing. We demonize it a lot of times in the keto space, but we need insulin to protect our brain, to get the blood sugar out of our body, get it out of the blood and store it. Now, if we're burning it, which means, let's say you went outside this morning before breakfast and you ran for 2 or 3 miles, you're going to have used up muscle glycogen predominantly in your leg muscles, which are larger muscles, so they hold a good bit of glycogen, and the liver. And you're going to that's going to keep your blood sugar, insulin and glucagon, they're going to keep your blood sugar level through that whole process. At that point, yes, you can go ahead and have a little bit more carbs with your breakfast because you've given it somewhere to go besides body fat. A lot of people try to do it on the other side with calories, and they say, well, I ran 3 miles, I burned 400 calories, that means I can have a Snickers bar.
Right.
Oh,
no. Yeah, I go for the food is fuel at that point. And as a runner, right now I'm running pretty consistently 4 to 6 miles every day, or 5 to 6 days a week. And then on the weekends, I'll do a longer run, maybe 10 or 13 miles. And you can tell that on those days, like my nutritional needs on a 4-mile day is far different from my nutritional needs on a 10 or a 13-mile day. And that's something else to keep in mind too. So when you do plan out whether or not you have that banana in your smoothie, just think about what your exercise has been for that day or the next day.
yeah. And the plan they kind of put in here, their ADAPT plan, they call it, it basically is a lot easier than counting calories. I can tell you, if you're just counting carbs, that's all you're doing is just one number. It's very easy to count your carbs. It's very easy to look that stuff up on the internet if it's not on the label, which, you shouldn't be eating a lot of things with labels. The actual real food doesn't have labels, or they don't have to market it. Chicken doesn't need a marketing. You see the chicken, you know what the chicken tastes like, you buy the chicken. And that's the way it's supposed to be, which is kind of a little funny side story. Our dog loves chicken and rice mixed in with kibble, with the dog food. We've started doing that down here, but she doesn't know what a chicken looks like. So when she sees these chickens running around the road, because they're all over the place down here, I'm thinking to myself, she doesn't know that that's what she's having for dinner. And if she did, would it change her behavior? Because she just ignores them. And I'm like, that's your favorite.
If she only knew.
That's your favorite food in the whole world.
Oh my goodness.
And you don't even know it.
No.
We've never fed you cat, but
oh my goodness.
For some reason you instinctively want to chase the cat. But just a funny little side story there. But so yeah, if, you don't have to think of it as keto. They say it's somewhat of a keto book. I called it somewhat of a keto book, but I don't want you to think that. I think it's just really finding that place that how many carbs can I tolerate based on my activity and my biology and my genetics, and going from there to find an optimal way for you to eat.
Yeah, that sounds like a really great book.
All right, Rachel, anything else we need to go over before we get off the call here?
No, that was a really good interview. I'd like to take a look at that book as well. Yeah,
and this would be a good book to buy now as we get into, because we're coming really close to the Christmas season, Hanukkah, end of the year, with the New Year's and all of that, and it tends to be a time when we overindulge, particularly in the sweets. So kind of having a good idea of these levels of carbs and starting to pay some attention to it. This is a good time to do it, so you're not putting on pounds that you then are thinking about January trying to take off again.
Good point.
Don't put them on there in the first place so you don't have to lose them again.
That's right.
All right.
That sounds great.
Have a great week, Rachel.
Thanks,
I'll talk to you
too.
next week.
Take care.
Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, I discuss weight loss after 40. Until then, have a happy and healthy week.